Welcome to the Savage Worlds GM podcast. I'm your host, Jared Savage Daddy Gunning. This episode, like all episodes, sponsored by Roll20.net, the world's largest virtual tabletop. Go check them out today on Roll20.net. Follow the show, SWGM Podcast, on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube, and yes, even now on iTunes. Subscribe today. Tonight's topic, better bad guys. Here to discuss it, Dave, the rules Maven Scott.
Greetings and salutations.
Dustin, the savage intern.
Hello, everyone.
And there are some who call him Jib.
You crazy kids, get off my lawn!
So tonight, we're going to have a conversation about how do you build a more compelling bad guy for your campaign.
You broke the rule. We're not supposed to say that word anymore.
What word? I didn't say the word conversation. Oh, damn it.
No, we're all adults here.
I bet not. We're just not starting that shit.
So does that mean we're having a...
It is not turning into a Reddit gang. I will turn this podcast around. We will go back home. Okay.
It's going to be a running gag. You can count on that.
So you hear this a lot in the community, a lot of this kind of questioning where the philosophy is, how do I get my bad guys to beat my players because my players are always beating up on my big bad? Woe is me as a GM. My players keep thwarting my big bag. My players killed my dragon with one punch. Savage Worlds happened. The dice exploded and they wiped out my big bad guy. Oh, the players tricked my big bad guy into walking into a canyon where a boulder's going to hit him. How do I soften the blows so he doesn't die at this most inopportune moment? But Mom. But Ma. So
When.
I'm just gonna cut to the quick and say you stop writing stupid bad guys.
I would say that you stop looking at bad guys as stat blocks.
Right?
Stop playing Savage Worlds like a goddamn video game.
Yeah.
You know, rules that are good for the players are good for the NPCs too. So, as the GM, when I'm in a pizza joint and the player characters pull out a bunch of guns, the first thing my ass is doing is diving for fucking cover.
Just a thought. Or, you know, if I'm the big bad, I'm not in a pizza joint where the players can pull out a bunch of guns to shoot at me, where I have to take cover. My lackeys are there.
My lackeys are in there. Oh, and after they mop up my lackeys, which, you know, the lackeys were kind of expendable anyway, before that even happens, I'm on the phone with my buddy, the police chief. Hey, chief, yeah, I just got a call from some employees at the pizza joint, and there's some stuff, some crazy people with guns going on, you know, down there. I'm just saying.
I'm dropping a tip to the local news reporter that if they get there now, they can catch footage of the heroes tearing apart the local dining establishment. Anonymously.
So, I'm going to go ahead and throw this out. I ran a superheroes game a year or two back. And in the game, it's four-colored. And if you break out a four-color game, you have to get clever. So the villains did whatever they could to never be seen, to always be sort of in the background. And they let the players who were the heroes just go completely wild and cause so much collateral damage that the UN came in and shut them down.
You know,
okay, well, but
there's a common thread in everything that we're saying here, okay? And that is, don't play your bad guys stupid.
Yeah.
Okay? Bad guys do not get to become big, bad, evil guys by being stupid.
Stop thinking like a henchman, start thinking like a mastermind.
Right. Okay?
Blofeld isn't going to, like, run out there and do kung fu. No, he's going to send 3 or 4 other guys with weird names and odd body parts to wear Mr. Bond down. Or he's just going to poison him and then stick him in a death trap. But you have somebody to handle your light work.
Well, there's something to be said for, okay, there's something to be said for tropes. And one of my favorite scenes in movies for a long, long time has been the Dr. Evil and Scott conversation in the original Austin Powers movie. And the Tim was like, "No, I've got a gun. We can just shh. No, you don't get it. But you're gonna, I'm gonna put them in the easily escapable situation. So everything goes to plan. What? But I got a gun. We can just.
I got a 9mm right here. It's right there. I dead 10 seconds.
No, you obviously don't get it, Scott. You just don't get it. No.
But Dad, come on.
Let me tell you a story about a man called Shh.
It's a preemptive.
So I just want to point out that this goes back to one of those things that Jib has said numerous times. That works really great in fiction.
Yeah.
It doesn't work as good in your game.
Works great in fiction.
Yeah.
Just because it's a trope of the genre doesn't mean it's appropriate for your game. And a great example of this, I actually just had this conversation with my roommate earlier today. And this idea of the dragon sleeping under the hoard of coins. We see it in every movie out there that introduces the big, bad, evil dragon. You've got Smaug. He's asleep. He bats one eye and blows a little puff of air out of his nose, and it's this entire mountain of gold coins that slide off and reveal that it's a dragon eye. Okay, who stood there for a year dumping buckets of gold coins to bury Smaug? Okay,
No.
We're talking about a gigantic creature. How did he get himself buried in a pile of gold coins that he couldn't get to? This is quintessentially the big thing. When we see Smaug leave the mountain, he bursts through a wall to do so because he went in there at a smaller size than he currently is. He couldn't leave and go get treasure and bring it back. So this idea that he burrowed himself down into his own treasure mound, but how did that treasure mound exist? We very clearly see when the dwarves left, there wasn't a dragon-sized pile of gold coins sitting there for him to burrow himself into. That shit was down in the vault in chests. It was spent on gemstones and armor and things that are in the vaults. So there's this entire trope, and it works great in fiction because on the screen you get this amazing visual of a dragon and the gold coins shimmering down his hide. But in a game, one, no player is going to survive having seen that unless they were really powerful. And that player cannot get that horde anywhere. Mm-hmm. You can't transport a dragon horde. You simply can't do it. That's why we suddenly have characters with bottomless bags, or there's no encumbrance rules for gold, or there's all these things that have become these tropes of gaming because we tried to follow so closely to other tropes of fiction that now we've had to create game mechanics that make no goddamn sense because we've cleaved too closely to these. And it's the same problem with the big bad is you're going to find yourself having to, the big bad doesn't take as much damage from a boulder being dropped on his head because he's the big bad evil guy, and I have to have this climactic scene where he talks to them. You're trying too hard to capture something you saw in a movie once rather than thinking about, would the big bad guy ever put himself in a position where they could drop a boulder on his head? He wouldn't be the big bad if he did.
Well, I mean, it's not like you had to create an entire Star Wars story to explain a huge plot hole in the original movie. I mean,
it's sad because it's better than the latest sequels.
Well, okay, hey, spoilers alert. If you haven't seen Rogue One, eat a bag of dicks. It's been on Blu-ray for a while. The whole idea that that whole thermal exhaust port was a built-in flaw is a long way to go to fill in a plot hole of, hey, how is it that you have this huge Death Star and you could actually just boop, drop one little boop, blow up the whole goddamn thing? Really? Would the designers really leave that big of a fucking flaw in it?
It's the size of a moon.
Space wizards.
I'm just going to point out there's a great YouTube video out there that answered that question long before Rogue One ever came around.
Well, I mean, there is something to be said for a little bit of the trope villain, and when I say that, I'm saying you shouldn't, as a game master, should you be designing a villain that is intended to just beat your players into the ground? Should it be that antagonistic, or where? I mean, kind of where do you draw that line? I'm just saying I'm not making a judgment call one way or the other because, well, I tend to lean towards Dick GM as it is. I think Negan is a perfect example of a better bad guy. Because what he's doing for survival motivations. But
would you actually say that Negan's not a trope villain?
Negan is
I would not
clever.
say Negan is not a trope villain. He is absolutely kind of a
I
James Bond, kind of like...
if you watch what he does, he is definitely more of a cult leader than a mustache twirler in terms of an archetype. Because what he does is he puts this little germ of an idea in people's brains, and then he treats them like Pavlov's dog. They ring that bell, and they're like, I'm Negan. I'm going to do what Negan would do because I'm Negan right now.
Well, not only that, he tries to take people who are very, very morally direct and black and white and expose the gray and go, hey, he doesn't quite do the come on over to the dark side, but does more of the,
you're not as good as you think you are.
Yeah, this ideal that you think you're the good guy and I'm the bad guy is a joke.
I think you're right.
As bad as I am.
That really is what goes into being a better bad guy.
To be amazingly fair here, it's not overly different from the role that got Jeffrey Dean Morgan his notoriety in Hollywood, which was the comedian in The Watchmen, where his entire persona is about the fact that this idea of right and wrong and good and bad and rules and anarchy are all a joke.
Right.
So again, I think there's absolutely room to have a trope character, but you can't cleave too close to that trope. You can't start modifying your game world and the rules that are supposed to apply to everyone simply based on how can I engender this trope to exist.
Right, I agree. But there is some lip service, though. There is some lip service to be paid to a Bond villain trope. There is some lip service to be paid to a Joker-style trope. To a degree.
Let's talk about the Joker. The Joker is a great example of a trope villain. He is the force of nature trope. And that is, you're going to get a villain that is absolutely 180 degrees off the hero's morality. That's what the Joker is. It is 100% this antagonistic force of nature that's personified by a character. The problem is that doesn't work for Superman, because Superman ends the Joker like that. So does Diana. So does Cyborg. Any other member of the entirety of the Justice League facing off against Joker, Joker automatically loses. And they show this in several of the events that happen where they just switch. And Batman takes on Lex Luthor while Superman goes and takes on the Joker. And lo and behold, they defeat them hands down in a matter of moments. The reason the Joker works is because he's antagonistic to Batman, who has a weakness for all the things that would allow him to immediately defeat the Joker.
Right.
So you can certainly do that.
Because if he kills the Joker, okay, because he's defeated the Joker many times, but if he kills the Joker, okay, that is his one remaining link to humanity.
And I think quintessentially, though, the aspect of it that really matters when we boil it down to that, the reason the Joker works is the Joker is used occasionally. Batman has all these other villains in his rogues gallery. If every single book came out, Batman versus the Joker, the line would die off sooner or later, because there's only so far you can go with that beating that same drum. If all you're doing as a GM is creating villains that are 100%, the antithema of the party, your players are going to lose interest because that's all you're throwing at them. You have to throw the occasional curveball. You have to break off of these perfect tropes and just throw realistic, holistic, full character villains at them, where all of a sudden the player stops and goes, but wait a minute, I kind of sympathize with what he's doing.
That is a very good point.
There, but I sympathize with what he's trying to accomplish.
Right.
Well, I think we've said it before too. Some of the best bad guys ever are the guys that aren't clear black and white mustache twirling bad guys. They're doing horrible, horrible things for personally very, very justified reasons.
Right.
Like the guy who wants to open up a portal and turn time back because he lost his wife and daughter in a horrible accident that was his fault because he was playing with his technology to begin with. He wants to try to correct that error, and he can't deal with the loss. He can't deal with the grief. He's going to build this time machine and turn the world inside out to correct this mistake that he can't live with. Well, yeah, but it's going to destroy the entire fabric of the universe. So what? So what? I have to correct this mistake. I have to do this. The guy, where you, and here's the other thing I like to kind of bring up. We're starting to kind of talk about stylistic choices for bad guys, different kind of flavors that we're talking about. And what Dave, we're talking about when we're talking about the Joker Batman situation is the mirrored reflection of the hero, except for this one thing that makes you the good guy. You're identical to the bad guy. The bad guy reflects kind of a dramatic thing back to you as a good guy. I'd like to kind of touch on the Negan thing for a second. Why is Rick a good guy? Why is Rick Grimes a good guy?
Because he's the protagonist. If you watch it, everybody was so upset about Shane for so long, but Shane was just ahead of the curve. By season 4 or 5, Rick is as bad, if not worse, than Shane.
Oh, I loved the meme that came out during the end of season 4, beginning of season 5, when it was a picture of Shane doing all this horrible crap, and then it was, here, Rick, eat a Snickers bar. And then it's Rick afterwards. You sounded a little bit like Shane. That was an amazing meme because we all could see it, finally.
Well, it's the Negan thing. Okay, I would argue that the mayor and Rick, the mayor of the hilltop and Rick, to use Walking Dead, terminology, are far worse villains than Negan. Because number one, the mayor agrees to break this deal he has with Negan that's keeping the peace at the hilltop, agrees to break that deal, that promise, as long as Rick and his group will go kill all of Negan's men and eliminate the problem. And then Rick's guys don't even do the heroic thing. They sneak in under the cover of darkness and kill motherfuckers in their sleep. In their sleep when they're defenseless.
Right.
Why is Rick the good guy in the Negan equation?
Even back it up to the previous season where Rick and company spend half a season plotting the overthrow of Alexandria from within.
Yep.
The entire time, it's posed as this altruistic for the greater good ideal, but at the same time, we all know that really he's the bad guy in that spin. And I mean, they hagger his appearance. They do a lot to really portray Rick in this dark antagonistic light against the protagonist people of Alexandria. And we see them as the lost sheep, and they just have to come around to Rick's ideals and things like that. But I mean, very much so, this is a great spot to look at and go, well, how do I write a better villain? Stop writing a villain. Write a hero who's out to stop the player characters.
Yep.
Right. Well, in most cases, if the player characters are running around like lunatics and they're doing the whole murder hobo thing, I think you really did write a hero. Like they're just.
Well, I think that writes itself.
I mean.
No, but thanks, David. That's exactly what I was saying. Is don't approach your bad guy from writing it from the perspective, oh, he's a bad guy. Write it from the perspective of, hey, he's this heroic guy. He's just as much a player character as a player characters, but he's multifaceted and has some interface with them.
I would say throw out the notion of good guys and bad guys altogether,
and focus on motivation.
Have people who have objectives, who have aims, who have goals, who have things that they want to accomplish, things that they want to do. And along with that, they have resources that they can draw from to accomplish them. And they have a level of commitment to this course. Okay? Because a real bad guy, a real, person who's involved, who's doing something, there's going to come a point where they're going to tap out.
Right.
Where they're going to go, yep, nope, I'm out.
So
I am out and I am leaving the area. I'm not going to be here anymore. Okay?
We keep pointing to fiction for these fictional examples. I'm going to take the reverse role for a second, and with what Jib just talked about, I'm going to point to real life historical examples. Look at the rise of the Third Reich in Germany.
Why do you always have to go racist Nazi, Dave? The first chance it's always fucking Hitler. It's always the Third goddamn Reich.
Because everyone in the goddamn world knows about Hitler, the Third Reich. This is quintessentially, this is not me talking about Nero, who burnt Rome. This is me talking about somebody that all of the viewers are absolutely going to know who he was.
All I can say is thank God you're not doing it when Manuel Sams is here and making a fool of the podcast. Go ahead.
So if we talk about that for a second and we look at what Hitler did, if you flip things around and you put yourself in the perspective of the German people who are hearing a leader stand up and talk about all these good things for Germans, and a propagandist arm that's keeping all the bad that he's doing out of the limelight and behind closed doors, there's no reason for the German people not to support what he wants to do at that point, because they don't even heard about the bad. They're only hearing about the good. And if you're one guy in the entire nation who gets an order to go do something, you haven't heard that anybody else is getting that order, you're less likely to stand up for it. So you see this slow descent into evil under the idealistic idea of doing what's in the best interest for the nation. If you build a villain on that in a fantasy trope, you've got this guy who is the main knight for the king, and he's going out and following orders to round up all the goblin tribes. Come to find out later, the goblins have been doing nothing, but they've been portrayed by everyone as raiders and horrible things. Then you've got a very easy army that's built up to stop the goblins, despite the fact the goblins did nothing. They lived in their little peaceful, enclave outside of the kingdom, but now we're going to attack the goblins because they're raiders and we have to stop them.
Right.
So it goes.
Now, one of the things to keep in mind about the rise of National Socialism in Germany is that it came on the heels of a couple of things.
Massive depression and assassination.
Massive depression.
Yeah.
The Treaty of Versailles at the end of World War I demanded of Germany that it pay reparations in such enormous sums that it absolutely destroyed the German economy.
Yep.
Okay? Now, you take defeat in war. Now we're going to be, battered financially. Okay? Do all of that. Okay? And you've created an atmosphere where normal, everyday people are ready to accept anything that makes them feel good.
Trump.
Don't do it. We're not doing politics on this fucking show. I will. To quote Negan, I will shut that shit down.
I'm just using it as another example of the ends that come out of any of these types of movements are entirely based on the current atmosphere that's going on in that area.
Right.
Whether it's Hitler's rise in the Third Reich, whether it's Caesar's rise in the Roman era, or it's Trump's rise now, it's all about how well they can present themselves and spin everything they're doing so that you don't look against it.
Not just that. Look at our own civil war, our own war for independence, where we were British colony and said, nope, we don't want to do that anymore. No, fuck you, King Charles.
People have a very narrow idea of what the Revolutionary War was actually about.
Well, hold on a second. And then we don't even fight like fucking gentlemen. We fight like savages, jumping out of trees. And we don't follow
war
the
has
rules
been
of war.
waged the same way for years, and we commit war crimes and kill officers at the outset of engagements, no prisoners, acts of piracy.
Well,
there were all kinds of shit going on that was against the world's rules.
Learned that in the French and Indian Wars a decade earlier.
Of course, where we brutalized the Indians. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I mean, let's expand the analogy to the wipeout of an entire indigenous people for colonization.
Well, and isn't that what Dave is presenting with his the knight working for the king who thinks he's doing the right thing, and the king's ordering the roundup of all these goblins because they're a threat, but really the king just wants to seize the lands and expand the breadth and width of his kingdom. Yeah, that's a perfect example of not just one bad guy, but a whole economic political structure that, I mean, what do you do as heroes in a fantasy game when the goblins come to you as refugees and go, please, sir, you must help us.
You must save us from these horrible raiders who are invading our village. Wait, what? I ran a game a while back where the player characters are explorers on a starship far, far out in space. Okay? Long way from their support structure. Okay? And they come upon this planet and they find these two warring factions on this planet. Okay? One of them is an offshoot of humans. The other one is insectoid. But I made the humans militant and warlike and not very pleasant, and the insects really just, they would be content to get along, except that these humans were destroying the planet.
Sounds an awful lot like Ender's Game.
Well, it was long before Ender's Game. Well, the book had been written, but I never read it. But the whole idea was to put the player characters in the middle of this conflict where the side that they would normally identify with is not nice people.
Yeah.
And the side that they wouldn't naturally identify with are nice people. Now, what are you going to do about that? What are you going to do with that? And I made the characters, because this was a convention game, I made the characters such that some of them were very hardcore human, and some of them were not, because I wanted to see the fireworks that went off when that happened.
Oh, you want to take a game and stand it completely on its head. Take and pitch to any one of your players at the outset of your campaign a hindrance, and then reverse it a little bit and throw that hindrance slightly different. And a great example of this is, take a character in the zombie apocalypse and give them a hindrance. Pacifist will not kill zombies. Zombies are to be rehabilitated and could possibly be saved, or they need to be rounded up and allowed to decay at their own time and then be put into a consecrated grave, because you are destroying the humanity of the person who's trapped in that body by the disease that turned them into a zombie. You put that into your game world. One character with that belief where everyone is going around with these big Billy Badass, I'm going to kill zombie, I got a hammer and I got a bat with nails in it, or I got a shotgun. And you got the guy who's standing up going, no, zombies' rights.
Well, you have Herschel.
Yeah.
You really have Herschel. And in all honesty, you can make it believable because he still believes they have a soul.
Yeah, he's fighting for his Christian belief system.
Well, I'm gonna say this. That is a theme that Robert Kirkman freaking loves because it is in the Fear the Walking Dead as well. They arrive on this island where this Spanish mansion is, and it's the same thing. It's more of a Catholic belief that they're not dead yet because their bodies are still living on, and you round them up and you talk to them. You honor the dead. You don't just walk around killing everybody and burying them or putting guns in their heads.
And I think that introducing an element like that to your game means you don't need a, black and white, twirl the mustache, big bad. The big bad can actually become the players facing off against the world that they're currently existing in.
Well, but there's a common thread through everything that we're saying here, okay? And that is, don't make your bad guy, whatever form it takes, stupid or two-dimensional. Give them depth. Give them real motivations, real reasons for doing things, real resources, and real limits to what they'll do.
Yeah, not just making them a plot device that you plunk in to challenge the players.
Well, think about...
Okay, here's a fundamental difference between Savage Worlds and certain other games, okay? You're not creating a set of encounters that they have to accomplish, okay? Savage Worlds doesn't work that way, doesn't think that way. Savage Worlds, you're creating the underpinnings from which a story is going to grow, okay? Give it the depth that it deserves.
We don't allow that hippy dippy, new age gaming bullshit on this show, Jim.
What's what you looking for here?
I just the bag of dicks in the mail. I take it.
So
we're kind of doing that currently in the Friday Night Dead End 2 kind of campaign launch where the players.
I thought we were dying in that one.
Well, some, but for motivation reasons and for clear telegraphs of what what happened last Friday night should have been a clear telegraph of, hey, proceed with caution, which the players did. They absolutely did.
Oh, I knew what was coming long before my character ever stepped through the door, but you got to go with what your character would do.
But it's evolving out of, you don't wait for the players to make a choice and then throw a bad guy roadblock in front of them. What you do is you go, okay, what's going on here? What's the fabric? What's the feel? What's the flavor of the situation in the area they're in? So that when they make a decision to go to the left, you go, okay, well, I've already kind of figured out, here's kind of what's going on. So to use that as an example, the Friday night game that we're playing, the characters have escaped.
You're going to want to lay that one out because that's an excellent example of exactly what we're talking about.
So the players have escaped Los Angeles. We're starting the zombie apocalypse basically at a la LA riot scene where there's cars gridlocked. The military and National Guard are involved. They're in the streets of LA. Everybody's trying to get to the freeways, but it's just this one massive parking lot. People are starting to take advantage and loot and raid. Police are on the streets in militia gear. The players stuck in traffic all just jump out of the car they're in and find safety in a Goodwill. There are reports of people with bath salt type illnesses. The press is suppressing it's zombies. They're kind of suppressing it because they don't want the panic to break out. We get to the point they escape from this Goodwill. They through a dramatic task find their way out of the city proper and find a reclusion on this resort, golf club resort in Brentwood, basically. And managed to get there a little worse for wear. Now, it's the players themselves in that game who said, we encounter an elderly groundskeeper who's the groundskeeper at this place. He's an on-site maintenance guy, and the hotel is under renovations. Because that way he has the motivations to be there because he's not aware of what's going on. He doesn't have a TV. He doesn't listen to radio. He listens to his vinyl.
The newspaper stopped being delivered 5 days ago.
Right. He's completely unaware of what's going on. He's not attached. The power grid is down, but he doesn't know it because the place is under renovations. It hasn't had power for months anyway. He's been running a generator. Blah, 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 blah. So the player characters decide that they're just going to interact with this guy. They're trying to load up and basically keep him occupied while they basically clear out his workman shed and try to find some way to survive. And I, as a GM, am totally aware they're doing it, not pushing too hard against it until one of the characters goes, hey, where'd that other fella go? And one of the players in roleplay goes, oh, Randy, no, you don't need to worry about him. He's a good guy. It's not like he was stealing or anything. He wouldn't rip you off. And you go, what now, young fella?
Why would you say such a thing?
Why would you say something like that? Oh, well, there was looting early on. Oh, well, if I want to keep my job, I better go lock down the shed. Oh, no, you don't need to go over there because he's going to discover he's been cleared out. And then one of the attractive, we have a player character who's basically a face corporate exec wife, like mom, shark mom, tiger mom, who fakes a trip and fall. Oh, I think I twisted my ankle. And distracts him. So there's this discussion about, well, wait, we should find an off-road vehicle and head north. The players are having this discussion. We should find an off-road vehicle capable of going off-road and head north. The NPC is going, well, I'm a Vietnam vet, and I'll tell you one thing, young fellow, the best place to be in the middle of civil distress is a military base. That's where you go. So there's this twisted debate. They decide to go with this guy around the fancy schmancy neighborhoods looking for a Hummer or some kind of off-road vehicle. They pull in this small cul-de-sac, no cars anywhere. Everything looks like it's locked down and evacuated. They've been driving for an hour and haven't seen shit. They come across this nice big home with a 3-car garage and a black Hummer H2 sitting out front. They climb out. They go inspect it. The car alarm is still on. They decide, okay, there might still be somebody inside. Let's go about this the right way. We're going to sneak around the back, and we're going to get in through the sliding glass door by the pool because it's the easiest way to get in. They make a little clackety-clack-clack trying to pick a lock. And for failing, it ended up just taking a crowbar to it and opening it up. Now, I've already decided that in this neighborhood, there's one person who is still hanging out, defending his homestead. He sent the other members of that family ahead. They have the bad misfortune of failing a notice roll. Not failing notice roll, doing well on a notice roll during a surprise roll, not meeting the agility roll, and then taking a bat to the ribs that basically, in dead end, you get no ability to soak, kills the character. And it's
that was a very quick death. I just want to point out.
And it's completely justified because they're breaking into somebody's home. This guy's defending his home against invaders.
So I just want to point out what really takes that scene. Here's this bad guy who's just slaughtered a player character in a single blow for sneaking into his home. It's home defense. It's clearly, not this guy's fault. What takes that guy to the next level for the entire party is the next thing he does is drop the bat in shock and horror. I didn't mean to kill him.
Yep.
And now you've got the players on this immediate conflicted thing because the immediate response when a member of the party is killed is to loyally slaughter whoever killed them. But now the guy has given up because he didn't mean to do what he did. He was defending his home, he's defending his property, and he even went further than he expected to go to do that. And now you've really humanized the bad guy in the situation when in all reality, you're just as a GM creating a foil for what the players have decided to do in the moment, which is the players are the bad guys. They're breaking into someone's home to steal their car.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And let's be fair, every role player is going to do it. You're going to sneak into the castle and rescue the princess. But from the point of view of the guards, you're invading the castle and allowing a prisoner to escape, or kidnapping the royal daughter, or whatever the case may be. Spin this and look at it from what is the true motivation of whoever the bad guy is in a given situation, and why are they standing there doing this thing they're doing? We've talked about on the show before this idea of you're going to walk up, you're this hot shit face character, and you're going to make this persuasion roll, and the guard is just going to, of course I'll let you into the royal palace. No, because that guard has a very specific motivation to keep his job as a guard, and he loves the royal family. He's been at their side most of his life. That's how he earned a spot as a guard at the royal palace. He's seen their day-to-day lives. He may have carried their laundry. He may have walked with them while they sobbed in grief over the fallen previous king. He's seen their actual daily lives and loves this family as his ruler. And now you're asking him on the basis of a little sweet talk at the gate and maybe a few gold coins to betray someone he loves, someone he is willing to lay his life down to protect.
There's a great movie on Netflix with Morgan Freeman in it where he plays a duke or something, and it's a medieval. And I can't remember
The Last Knights.
Yes, I think that's something. I think it's called The Last Knights. It's a great piece of fiction, role play story in a medieval type fantasy situation to look at, to where exactly what Dave just described. This guy is the right hand man, the personal protector of Morgan Freeman's chancellor character, basically.
Last Knights.
Yeah, and the king is not watching his comptroller very well, and the guy is bribing people and driving up taxes and all this other shit. And Morgan Freeman's character commits political suicide on purpose to basically draw attention to it in open court. And you see this great scene where the guy wants to defend him against everybody else, draw a sword, defend Morgan Freeman against everybody else. And Morgan Freeman basically orders him to stand down and watch him be beheaded.
To behead him himself. This knight is ordered by the king to lop off the head of his duke, the man he's willing to lay his life down for. And then his duke tells him, you have to do this. That's my final command to you. You must take and end my life. And it's emotionally a very well delivered scene. I highly recommend it. It sets up the whole rest of the film, which is amazing. But the idea is, again, this character has a motivation that makes them conflicted. And I think that conflict, internal conflict, is far more valuable than dice conflict.
Right, or combat encounter.
And I think that's what we're really getting at, is if you build a character, if you build your bad guys as nothing more than stat blocks, you're not telling a story. You are really just playing a war game. And
you're doing encounters.
Yeah, I mean, and Savage Worlds is a great system when you want to role play, when you want to get into a plot and get into a story. If you really just want encounters, play Warhammer 40K. I mean,
the other thing too is I would say start with a villain that you're making, that your player characters, not your players, well, but your players too, hopefully, but your player characters at least can empathize with and relate to where they're not just some faceless evil monster to be destroyed. I mean, it's the quintessential thing about running a zombie apocalypse. There's this sort of moral freedom to kill the dead because they're dead. They're just monsters. And woohoo! You just run it up and just start slashing and hacking and killing the monsters. But in a zombie survival horror game, the dead are just scenery. They're really setting. The real evil, the real bad guys, the real conflict comes from the other player, the other people in that world who are just as desperate to survive as you. And it becomes a question of how far are you willing to go? How do you hold on to humanity? Do you hold on?
Do you hold on to it?
Yeah. How far are you willing to go to survive? Where do you draw the line? And I think that's the thing that's not explored enough in zombie role-playing games. It all becomes all about the high action, shoot 'em up, kill the zombies.
Right.
Well, I mean, as much as I hate to plug a product other than Savage Worlds, especially the one I'm about to plug, there's a system out there, and the mechanic in it that does what we're talking about is completely ignored by the players of it, and that's Vampire the Masquerade. Yep. You have an actual score of how much of your humanity are you maintaining in the face of being a vampire. And most of the groups I've ever played with throw that out and just completely ignore it and don't care because they want to exult in the idea of being a vampire rather than this struggle of hanging on to the last vestige of what made you.
This is my gripe with people role-playing vampires. I'm not saying everybody does this, but I've seen this a fair amount. And that is, they want the eternal youth and beauty, the super strength, super speed, the superpowers, the super senses, the super blah, 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 blah. And they don't want any of the downside. Mm-hmm. They don't want to have to deal with being a blood-sucking fiend of the night, not being able to, do this, that, and the other thing. And I'm just like, why would I want to do that? In the one vampire campaign I've played, I tried so hard to lose humanity because I wanted to play that. And in that game, it would have had teeth because that's just the nature of that group. I could not fucking lose humanity in that game to save my ass.
Well, I mean,
every other fucking die roll in that game except that one.
So let me ask this, and again, the people out there in the crowd who are going to hear this are probably going to want to hang me afterward. But is there a flaw in Savage Worlds that there is no motivation that you assume for your character inherent in it? If we see things out there in other games, D&D even just boiled it down to an alignment system that said your character is supposed to follow these basic guidelines regarding their behavior, and if you don't, the GM is well within their right to question it because you as the player set that benchmark for where you're going to behave. A vampire sets a benchmark for what's acceptable behavior for humanity, what isn't, and under what auspices you're challenged on that. Games, other games I know, I believe it's Powered by the Apocalypse has you set up all those questions about your character that you have to answer beforehand. So you kind of have this baseline of what's the character supposed to do. And at that point, once you start down that path, it gives a lot more teeth to playing whole characters. Is the reason we see people questioning that so much in Savage Worlds games because Savage Worlds doesn't have anywhere in the system at all that says what's your motivation, what's the line you will not cross.
It does have it though. Big call out, if you pick up the Codex Infernus, they actually have mechanics for corruption. But even without that, if you go into the Horror Companion or even the basic Deluxe, if you adjust the sanity mechanic and say, okay, you did something evil, roll sanity. Let's see if you are getting corrupted.
But I'm just going to point out, sanity is a specific mechanic that was brought about predominantly when Cthulhu was brought to Savage Worlds, it was added to it. If we're talking about core rules, the closest you're going to get with anything that I'm talking about are things like the Code of Honor hindrance or the Loyalty hindrance. And if your character doesn't take those, if you as a player don't proactively pick that among the list of options, you have nothing that says my character must act a certain way.
You're correct.
You're completely at will to use your character as a paper doll to do whatever the fuck you want.
That's absolutely 100% correct. I will back that play. I will say yes. I will sign on the dotted line. I will then counter that with the GM by going, as a GM, the purveyor of this world, there is an existing social conduct, code of conduct, and a moral code that this world follows. And when you violate it, congratulations, there are going to be consequences. You will end up it's basically getting the wanted major, the outsider hindrance placed on you at a certain point. I'm not saying as an immediate punitive, but I like the fact that Savage Worlds doesn't enforce any kind of moral alignment, anything in that role play. It's there if you want it. There's the heroic hindrance. There's the loyal hindrance if you want to play that type of character. You could also play the completely amoral character who's basically a psychopath or a sociopath of, hey, I don't have any feelings one way or the other. I'm in it for me. I mean, there
are going to be ramifications of that. And
absolutely.
The whole alignment thing in Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder and whatnot is an abstraction to try to quantify something.
Well,
I'm not saying that those systems are perfect. By no means do I feel like any game system out there has done it perfectly. I'm just saying, is that actually a flaw of Savage Worlds?
No, I don't
think so. Completely missing, and therefore we don't have this kind of enforced by the system holistic character.
Well, I would say no, it does exist, and no, it's not an oversight. I think it's a very clever design choice because look at what happens. Look at what's happened to all the other publishers who tried to do basically the prohibition thing with legalizing morality and saying, hey, you have to pick an alignment. Kind of your role play has to be influenced by that. What happened to alignments in D&D? Fuck you. Nobody pays attention.
Yeah.
What happened to the humanity thing in the world? Fuck you. We don't play that part of it. So if you're going to have that kind of mechanic there, other game systems have proven players go, step on my agency. I'll play this the way I want to play it. So I think it's actually a feature, not a design flaw. I think it's an intentional. Nope, wave off. We have a few hindrances. If you want to lean that way, go ahead. If you don't want to lean that way, create your character as a mean, bloodthirsty son of a bitch. That becomes the GM's problem. As far as Savage Worlds core rules are concerned, that's sort of like, hey, that's the GM's deal.
Then is that a flaw that it's not addressed more fully in the GMing section of the book to tell you that as a GM, you're supposed to set a code of morality for the world the characters are in and then subject them to those consequences based on the world they're playing within. Because again,
I think it deserves a paragraph.
How do I challenge my players?
I agree. I think it deserves discussion in the book.
Yeah.
It's going to be the thing that groups are going to ignore.
It's one of those. We're getting into the philosophical issue of what is good, what is good by choice versus what is good by social standard. Going back to the whole Morgan Freeman, he did the right moral thing in the movie, but by social standards, he did the wrong thing.
Right. He did something illegal, but just.
Exactly. Yeah. And one of the problems that we get into as a group and as a collective is not everyone is on the same moral level. Like if you go into Kohlberg's theory of moral development, the very first level, and it's the level that 60 to 40%, if not more by now, of the population is at, is if there is no punishment, it's good. It's punishment and reward, and there you go.
Well, and I'll say this too. Trying to impose morality in a game, in a role-playing game, trying to quantify that and have a mechanic for it. It's a role-playing game. I mean, if you listen, there's something to be said for showing up on a Friday night, rolling dice and killing shit. I mean,
but I'm going to counter that with that's why the showdown rules exist.
Mm-hmm.
If all you want to do is have a paper doll that you throw on the table, we roll some dice and kill some shit, go play the war game, go play Showdown. If you want to play a role-playing game, your responsibility is to have a role.
Yep.
Jib, I think it's time for a story.
Okay. Well,
you can always tackle that question we have.
Let's tackle that question.
Good question.
Because I'm going to pronounce the name because everybody knows that is my forte.
Getting Jared to pronounce your name on a broadcast.
Pronouncing the name. It's Manalui. Lulu.
So Savage World's bad guys
as beginner.
Keep me making bad guys. Savage Worlds is a seasoned RPG. Savage Worlds, as a rule set, cares about one thing and one thing only, and that is the impact of the thing on the rules. The rest of it is up to you. This is a beautiful thing because it gives you the power to create a bad guy who philosophically fits what you are trying to do. That's
I reject Dave's pronunciation of Manny Analu.
That's not my pronunciation. I'm copying that from him in chat. Just throwing it out.
That's okay. No, it's Manalui. That's what I've decided the name is, and it'll forever be Manalui. No, it's Manalui. The ANI is mostly silent.
This is a terrible time to have dyslexia.
Well, welcome to the podcast and the way Jared will treat his fans.
Welcome to the mind of Savage Daddy. That's Manalunanudi.
The place you don't want to be is in the mind of Savage Daddy.
I mean, and I agree with Jib that Savage Worlds places the onus on the GM and the play, not just the GM, the players as well. I'll also say this too. It's one of those things where it can also be a tremendous burden because, well, guess what? All that's on you, Skippy.
Yeah, all that's on you, but you have the power to do that. Now, here's the thing that people need to remember. I might have said this a time or two. Okay? You don't have to know everything at the outset. But what you do have to know is who are the people that matter in your game right now.
I think there's a cognitive disconnect that happens at the table when people see this idea of, Bolt works just because it works, and how you describe it doesn't matter. I think there's a cognitive disconnect to apply that to everything else in the game. I think people are struggling enough just to be able to say that Bolt can be a firebolt, it can be magic missile, it can also be, I open my mouth and shoot out a stream of bees. I think that is something that the player base, because we're getting such an influx of new players, because we're getting so many new people who are coming over to it and who haven't been playing it for 10 years, the way a lot of us have been, that those people are having such a difficult time struggling with that it's difficult to then apply that same mentality of separate mechanics from narrative entirely. The rules only worry about mechanics. The narrative is on you. I think that is something that, again, second nature to veteran Savage Worlds players, and where, you know, he's asking, sell me on it as a beginner, and then I'll keep doing it as a seasoned. Well, as a seasoned, you won't even have to try. It'll become second nature because the rule set will beat it into your head with shooting is shooting is shooting, fighting is fighting is fighting. A bolt is a bolt is a bolt. It doesn't matter how you describe it in your game. Once you get past that point, the game does everything else to teach you this lesson. I think the people who struggle with this the most are the ones who haven't divorced their narrative and motivations from the mechanics, and they still are thinking in that 3-act. The first act is minions, the second act is minions with a lieutenant, the third act is the big bad, a couple lieutenants and a few minions. And that works great for D&D, where it's this slog fest of encounters. For Savage Worlds, it just doesn't.
Right.
It's a very good point. Absolutely. I would say too, like, it's I think Savage Worlds grows out of this development where somebody gets pissed off at D&D going, wait a minute, why do I have to memorize this entire long list of fucking spells when they all do 1d4 damage or multiples of 1d4 and they're at range? Why Magic Missile 1, Magic Missile 2, Magic Missile 3, Magic Missile 17, whatever. Why the fuck? Why does it have to be fire? Why do I have to memorize all these different spells when all I care about is what damage does it do? So Savage Worlds goes, hey, we don't give a shit. We don't give a shit what you call it. We don't give a shit what it looks like. It does at range. Here's the range increments and penalties. You make a spellcasting roll, and if you're successful, 2d6.
So
or 3. Done.
He asks a secondary kind of redirect here on this.
Okay.
Is he can create any bad guy he wants in any system. Why would he want to do that with Savage Worlds instead of Cypher or BRP? And immediately right after that in chat, he's immediately told, why drink Coke over Pepsi? Why drink Pepsi over Coke? It's all preference. I think what we're talking about right now is once you get Savage Worlds into your blood, you can't get it the fuck back out. Once you've had a taste of manna from heaven and you realize, wait, I can play a role-playing game that doesn't get in my way. I can play a role-playing game that has one rule for fireball, for lightning bolt, for stream of bees, for archer with a magnetic bow, for a cybernetic robot with an arm gun
cannon
that pops out, or, you know, the laser beams out of Superman's eyes. Once you realize it's one rule, you have to learn to do all of that, that you literally don't have to reteach your players how to do something every time you want to switch gears and play something different. Once you start sampling from the buffet table of everything Savage Worlds can do, the ability to create any villain in Savage Worlds means so much more than it does in D&D, where that villain can only work for D&D fantasy. It can't work for a modern. It can't work for a cyberpunk. It can't work for a space opera. It can't work for superheroes. It can't work for Indiana Jones pulp. That's the crux of that, I think.
Here's the other reason why. Bad guys in Savage Worlds versus bad guys in D&D. I don't have to worry about building a combat-rated, matching, balanced encounter. What the encounter is what the story fucking says it is. Because you don't have to build a combat encounter, because Savage Worlds is not about attrition of hit points.
I don't have to worry about whether or not there's 4 or 5 goblins in the room. I can instead look at the fact, well, how many goblins would be in a band? Well, they don't ever leave their village in less than 20. So when you go into that room, there's 20 goblins. Why? Because there would be 20 goblins. Right. Don't worry about, is that a balanced encounter for 5 players? Because Savage Worlds goes, balance!
Right. We got dice that can explode multiple times. We have a cheat mechanic called a Benny that lets you reroll shit you don't like. And guess what? Everybody in the game suffers the same effect from wounds.
Right.
That's one of the things that I really, really like about Savage Worlds is that anybody can die from a single bullet. Like it is,
game balances you.
Yeah. Right, comrade?
Bat balances you very quickly. I'll speak from experience.
I mean, it doesn't make any sense that it changes the dynamic of the game. Because if you have a hit point attrition style game, then the big bad can stand out there, look at you, crunch some numbers, and say, I have too many points, and we're going to go in turns, so you're going to die. But with Savage Worlds, he can't get cocky like that because he's got 3 wounds no matter how good his armor is.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. A D&D dragon is entirely designed that one of the player characters dies before it's dead because they will run out of hit points before it does.
Mm-hmm.
That's what that encounter is balanced on, is that mathematically speaking, unless your players are absolutely doing everything in their power to save their character, reaching into that backpack and popping potions and magic spells and all of that, they are going to mathematically be killed by the bigger bad guy. Savage World says, no, you can kill my bad guy in 1 hit. You just have to get lucky.
Right.
I'm going to tell you a great story, and it's my job as the GM to make sure the bad guy doesn't do something as stupid as expose himself to an arrow shot to the head.
Best way to avoid arrow shot to head, don't be in zip code.
Mm-hmm.
So
always bring minion, make a great shield.
Okay, so to answer Mana Louie's question again, Savage World's bad guys should be narrative bad guys. They don't have to be stat block bad guys. You have the freedom as a GM to play that up to the 9s as a Darth Vader or an Emperor character. Go ahead, create that character. You can play it as close to the vest as you want, as a James Bond villain, Bloomfeld, Mr. Bond, quite foolish, petting a Persian cat. It doesn't matter because either Darth Vader or Bloomfeld can have the same stats. It just doesn't matter. It does not guarantee building Darth Vader at legendary with force powers versus building Bloomfeld with technical gadgets and secret traps and minions and a war room, spy agent ninja training room, whatever. They both have the same level of resources, and the game system doesn't care what game style you're playing. Like Dave was saying, it just doesn't matter.
The other great thing with that is that the novice character really can kill Darth Vader.
Yep.
The legendary, big bad bounty hunter known as Boba Fett really can be knocked in a pit by a blind man who couldn't see him and die, because that's where your story goes in Savage Worlds. You don't have to worry about the attrition of hit points to get there. You don't have to worry about some of the other kind of, I'm just going to call it clusterfuck of additional mechanics necessary to knock a guy over a ledge, because he's going to get, well, did he make his saving throw? Did he make his last chance grab? Did this thing kick in to stop him from losing ground when he got pushed? There's all these additional mechanics that so many games have just so they can sell you a book of mechanics. Savage Worlds doesn't do that. They would rather sell you a book of great stories to tell with that $9.99 book of mechanics they already sold you.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
And once you're familiar with the rules, once you start with Savage Worlds and you familiarize yourself with the rules and you drink the Kool-Aid, so to speak, James,
trapping flavored Kool-Aid.
If you're too young to realize what that metaphor means, Google Jim Jones. But if once you drink the Savage Worlds Kool-Aid and the light bulb goes off over your head, it's, I have one rule to bind them all. I only need one rule. I don't need. Oh, okay. So no, I pick him up and I grab it by the tail and I pivot it and I swing it. And I hammer throw it. Oh shit. Where's the rules on throwing? Do you have throwing as a skill? And then your brain goes, wait a minute. What's the effect? Oh, it's a push maneuver. Done. It doesn't matter that I'm grabbing you by a tail and describing this thing, or I'm literally shoulder down pushing you, lineman style down the,
or I'm using
down the field,
kinetics to push you with the force.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. My brain in Savage Worlds goes, oh, it's all push. Doesn't matter what wrapping paper I have on that box. When I open it up, it's got a label that says push. Button, press push, done. And it's a great thing about Savage Worlds is it allows you can literally, and I mean this literally, Dave, Jib, Dustin, myself could show up at a con with the core rule book and just sit there and go, what do you want to play? We want to play medieval fantasy. Great, let's do it.
Done.
I don't need to have let's play a noir detective game. Great, let's do it.
Here's some blank character sheets. Go.
I've done that before, actually. I ran Deadlands Noir at a convention with some friends that were like, man, we're bored. And I'm like, okay. And I just made up the one shot as we played. And you can do that in Savage Worlds.
Oh,
like,
you can say,
I'll take it a step further.
Let's play Space Opera. Great. Let's play Scooby-Doo. Awesome. Go. Here.
One trip to the PEG forums, to a recent post by our beloved Clint Black. I can run Savage Worlds at a con with no pencil, no record sheets, no dice as the GM. Gauntlet thrown. Literally, I can do that with the core rules and a single page from the forums where Clint said, here's the formula to make all dice rolls player-facing. Here's the simple formula that makes everything a dice roll the players make. As the GM, I never touch the dice.
Nice.
Clint Black's been drinking the Apocalypse World Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
Well, I believe it was a challenge from Ron Blessing. What would a player-facing thing from Savage Worlds look like? And Clint's like, oh, I'll take that challenge. Here it is. And he dropped some knowledge on some folks with like, here's the full long-form formula for how I figured it out in the whole 9 yards. It's actually a great read, and it gives you a better look behind the mental gymnastics necessary to be a game developer in this industry.
So let's talk real quick. I just want to touch Amanda Louie's question one more time. With Cypher versus BRP, what's the point of BRP? Basic role-playing system? That's usually what's used for Cthulhu? Call it Cthulhu? Okay.
Well,
what's the general conceit of BRP? For example,
other game systems, or any game system, is going to give you a look and feel. It's going to give you a feel of how things resolve in the game. Okay. Now, one of the things that you have to kind of fiddle with some dials about on Savage Worlds is if you want to get that feeling of totally out of your depth hopelessness that is endemic to Call of Cthulhu. There's some things you have to fiddle with.
And I mean, there's some great examples. There's great examples of setting rules that have been created by licensees and fans to capture those different feelings. I just recently saw one where a guy wrote up his own critical hits chart that, he presses one button and the computer does some dice rolls and everything. And it actually drops critical hits on targets for the players when they roll really well. Or, the Call of Cthulhu that they did for Savage Worlds has the version of gritty damage that Jared absolutely loves, where you don't soak it and you make an immediate incapacitation roll because it robs the player of that safety net of having 3 wounds.
Yeah, you can spend the bennies. Here's the thing, too. The conceit of that is you can still spend your bennies not to die on the incapacitation roll.
Right.
I mean, you still, and the internet froze for a second. Okay, so you still have that opportunity to spend bennies that you would use to soak wounds and not suffer them. You still get it to, let's avoid death or permanent injury. But it creates this feeling at the table of, I am not safe.
Yeah,
I can die from a paper cut.
The GM tells you lost the initiative, and your butt puckers instantly as you go, oh, dear God. And you wait to find out if you survive to your initiative card. That one rule change completely changes that I'm a badass Indiana Jones. You're going to come at me with all these sword slashes. I'm just going to shoot you down to, oh my God, I really got to hide behind everything that I can. And that's one rule. There are dozens of sites out there chock full of setting rules that have been created by the fans and by the licensees.
Right. And the nice thing about this, let's say, for example, you drink the Savage Worlds Kool-Aid, you learn the core rule system, it becomes part of you. You carry it with you. You start to just automatically think in those terms in the game. Once you go and pick up a custom setting like or Realms of Cthulhu, which is the Savage Worlds licensee version of basically BRP, there's only like 2 rule changes in there to the core rules that reinforce that setting. So it's not like you're learning a whole new Call of Cthulhu Savage Worlds. You're just applying these 2 setting rules that help carry that feeling forward. And it's very natural. It's very easy to slide into. It's not hard to pick that up and run with it. Same thing with Deadlands. A couple changes to the way bennies work, a little few changes to things like fear levels and things like that. Like a handful of rules that add on to the existing core rule to skin it to be the Weird West or to be whatever. So, yeah, I think if Savage World has existed at the same time that, D&D 3.5 existed for me when I was coming up, I would have definitely just learned Savage Worlds right away.
Right.
It gives you the most flexibility. You can play anything you can imagine.
Well, you can come up with games. Like you can actually just world build for a little bit, take a basic setting that you want to work with, capture the spirit of it. I think that's like one of the issues that a lot of people when they're doing conversions get wrong. They try to like literally make a mechanic for everything, so it's file by file. I'm like, you're still playing that same game. Capture the spirit of it. Get it in your head that a small melee weapon is a D4, a medium melee weapon is a D6, and a larger one is a D8. Guns are 2D6 or 2D8 if they're bigger. It's an easy thing, man. Like the universe works on very simple rules. They just look different, and Savage Worlds is the same way. The rules are extremely simple. I've had friends that said, you can learn this system in a night. The basics of it. You can learn the basics of this system in a night.
I can teach a player to play this game in 15 minutes, but you can spend a lifetime trying to master it.
Right.
I probably played for 5 years off and on before I fell in love with the system. It was a secondary or even tertiary system for me behind other stuff I was playing for at least half a decade.
Well, I'll put it this way. Here's how I stumbled into Savage Worlds. Here's my story on becoming a Savage Worlds GM. I was looking for a role-playing game system that could handle My Little Pony because my 8-year-old daughter was interested in role-playing.
There you go.
Right.
Okay, D20. No, I'd have to homebrew the fuck out of that. What? Shit. And then I heard a Happy Jacks RPG podcast talking about, oh, no, Savage Worlds, this, that, and the other. I'm like, oh, really? Let me go check this out. Hallelujah. Angel started screaming like, oh, my God. This is so simple. 8-year-olds could easily grok this.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, God, let's play. And you can play anything in this. I'm running a zombie campaign with it. I mean, I'm running a full-on hardcore, super gritty Walking Dead with it. Dave's run Pirates with it. Star Wars with it. He and I both done Star Wars with it.
My Wednesday night group just wrapped up an entire series of playing BattleTech with it, and then rolled into D&D Adventures. Just picked up and dropped in the narrative, and we're playing the D&D written adventure using Savage Worlds
Yeah.
because it's what we wanted to do. And Savage Worlds was just a clean sweep right through it all. We didn't have to change rules. We didn't have to relearn or re-educate anybody on mechanics. It just, bam, it was easy.
I've long since lost track of all the different things I've run in Savage Worlds.
Yeah, and as Robert knows, puts out there, plug and play.
Yeah.
What's the pitch for Savage World? Plug and play.
One of my favorite comments from Ron Blessing ever is that every time he picks up a new system and thumbs through it, he gives it about 15 minutes before he goes, oh, I could do that easier in Savage Worlds. Oh, I could do that easier in Savage Worlds. Why wouldn't I just run this in Savage Worlds?
Now, to be fair, okay, I do the same thing and I feel the same way. But to be fair, I run a lot of other game systems. Why? 2 reasons. 1, I'm a total game system slut. And 2, I like to see how they work. How they work.
The interesting aspect of that is, to me, it's not even always seeing how they work. It's enjoying doing something different in the disturbation that's going on underneath the narrative that we're all doing.
Totally fair.
All right. So
I'm playing a D&D 5e campaign every Sunday right now.
Getting back on topic, one of the
hold on. I had to take you off topic for a second because Dave released a piece of gold. We'll come back to you in just a second, Dustin.
Okay.
Dave released a piece of gold I had to put out there. So everybody, do me a favor who's watching this broadcast tonight or hearing it. Let's see if we can get hashtag disturbation trending.
Okay, hold on. Don't blame this one on me. That's actually a jib-ism from a few times back.
That's okay. I'm laying it squarely at your feet, Dave, for this episode because it's going to be on this episode, and I'm going to put hashtag disturbation in the show notes. So everybody feel free to tweet this hashtag disturbation, and let's see if we get that trending. Go ahead, Dustin. Get us back on topic.
Getting back on topic, one of the perks of Savage Worlds, since we don't have the alignments, you can narratively run your villains the way you want to. You do not have to play a villain as this hard and fast, this is the only way to do it. They can have their own motivation, they can have their own thoughts, and they should. So you can go ahead.
I would challenge anybody watching this episode to make because we're talking tonight about better villains and doing villains in a way that are multifaceted, have their own motivations. Feel free to have your villain's motivation change after they've encountered the party. Go ahead. Feel free to have your party hate this guy with the passion of 1,000 burning suns and want his death, and then have him walk into their camp defenseless, white flag, and going, you know what? I've seen the errors of my ways. I want to join you guys. And make him just try that. Throw that out there, but build that villain in such a way where it becomes a true Sophie's choice, but for the players of, he would be a great asset. God, he knows a lot of, yeah, but all the shit he's done, no, he's going to fuck us. The first chance we get, he's going to turn around. He's going to stab us in the back. Oh, I don't know. Feel free, play it. And if they accept it and go, okay, fine, then go, all right, there you go, guys, go. He's an allied wild card extra. From this point forward, he's a wild card extra for your guys' team. And then create a new bad guy in response to him joining forces with the opposition. You can extend your game that way. But make a character, I would say, strive to make a villain that even your player characters can sympathize and empathize with. When he does that, hey, mea culpa. My bad. Sorry, guys. I lost my head for a minute because, orcs killed my entire family, and I thought you had something to do with it. My bad. Try that kind of Try that kind of villain. Try that kind of character.
But right, I totally agree. I'm going to bring it back around to the same thing I've said a couple of times, and that is all of this advice comes down to two simple things: make your bad guys smart and multidimensional.
Yep.
And the rest will actually take care of itself.
Right. Let's just at the icing on this bad guy cake. I kind of want to like explore Darth Vader as that kind of bad guy, as a fictional bad guy.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a badass, high-level magic user with a laser sword and no milk of human kindness, no compassion whatsoever.
Sure.
What are his motivations? How did he get there? He did it for love.
It was a chick.
It was a chick.
He did it because he hated sand.
And he may be one badass mofo. He's still subservient to one person in the galaxy that tells him what to fucking do. And he says, yes, master.
Well, very early on, they set the motivation for Darth Vader in the prequel trilogy when we get to see him as not the villain, but this main character that we get to see all the depth of. They very early on have him have a conversation with Padme where he specifically says, we should all agree on what's best for everyone and then do that. Well, what happens if they don't agree? Well, someone should make them. We see his motivation right there. That is what drives everything else that happens in Star Wars. Literally all the way into the latest Disney releases. Everything that follows is because of one man's motivation to make people do what's
the
in
right thing.
Everyone's best interest. The right thing.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of getting a little bit into Darth Vader's or Anakin's motivation. Another thing that happened is that there's that one scene where Palpatine and Mace Windu are facing off, and Mace wins the fight, and Mace is going to kill Palpatine with no trial, without taking him in. He just says, he's too powerful, I have to end him. And Anakin says, no. At that point, when Mace Windu is going to dishonorably kill a downed opponent who has been defeated by his own Force lightning, who's the bad guy?
Right.
And,
yeah, bad guy, good and evil are points
of view. Yep.
Are points of view.
You know, it's the Obi-Wan Kenobi thing very later on in Star Wars that well, a great many things depend on your point of view. A certain point of view. And I mean, and they have Anakin come right out and say, like in the big fight on Mustafar, like, from my point of view, the Jedi are evil.
Yeah.
They're trying to and they're not even the Jedi in the prequels are violating their own code.
Left, right, and center. I mean, let's just be honest.
Yeah.
It's not even like occasionally. It's not because of the war. We see they were doing that before that. So much so that Dooku turned and walked away from the Order long before even Episode 1.
I said long ago, because they said, that Anakin would bring balance to the Force. I'm like, balance doesn't mean good. Balance doesn't mean you win.
Balance means there's two bad guys. Let's get it all the way down to two good guys.
Balance
means balance.
There's a level of equity of influence in the universe.
Mm-hmm.
And technically, they have actually said now that Luke is the one who will bring balance to the Force. He's the chosen one, not Anakin.
Right. Well, and you get this thing too, and Anakin's got a good point as well. It's like, wait, you're gonna make me a master, but you're not gonna give me a seat on the council. That's never been done in the history. It's not fair. It's not right.
Right.
I mean, so if you kind of look at it, damn, the Jedi kind of dicked Anakin over his entire freaking life.
Yeah, but we're reading
Just-
way too much into this because we actually watched the prequels and paid attention to the very cobbled together story.
I mean, not
We
only
paid more attention than George Lucas, in all honesty.
not only did they bend him over and ass raped him. I mean, it's like they rolled their dicks in kitty litter first as well. I mean, damn, it wasn't.
And you don't hold me for disturbation after kitty litter ass rape.
Well, disturbation is RPG appropriate as a hashtag. But I mean, to the point where Anakin now, and here's the thing too, it's a flawed sense. It's a flawed sense of righteousness and right and wrong, because even Anakin takes it too far and almost kills Padme in his anger and everything else. They can't control it. And ultimately, at the end of the day, he's being manipulated by a maniacal, space Hitler who wants to rule the entire galaxy, and everybody's being manipulated by this mastermind.
Why did bring it back to Hitler?
I'm just following your lead, Dave. I just wanted you to bring it back.
Okay, so
In comedy, they call that a callback. Go ahead.
here's the thing about Hitler. He really just had a great
I didn't
charisma
know we were
score.
gonna go there. I was gonna say it was the uniform.
It was. They're designed by
uniforms.
Hugo Boss, okay?
Yeah,
The reason why we always go back to the Nazis is because they were the perfect villain. They're looking in space. They're looking for the Holy Grail. They're digging up occult stuff. They're male models while they do it. It's like, what will we be known for in the future? I know. People being, the fiction.
And on that note, we'll wrap it up. This is Jared Savage Daddy Gunning for Jim, Dustin the Intern, and Dave the Savage Maven, the Savage Rules Maven. Scott saying, keep rolling and stay savage.